being a warrior today. My name is Jeremy Rawls. Our what is the price should be the context that you're looking at. Content moving forward will consist of these areas identified in the slide. Please take a moment to read. Everybody good? A common misconception of current day attributes concerning classes of American society set on the facts of the warrior class being extinct. Though it has been greatly reduced in number, it is not missing in any way. Currently, there are over 320 million citizens in the U.S., which 1.4 million are on active duty in the armed forces. There are over 22 million veterans that served in some capacity in their lives as well. So 23.5 million people make up the warrior class. The class is actually much larger when you calculate supporters, dependents, and family members that operate the same manner and have the same values and beliefs. How does that compare overall? 23.5 million making up 7.3% of the population. But what is mostly used is stating that only 1% serve in the armed forces at any given time. What exactly is a warrior? In the traditional sense, a warrior is a fighter or one that stands in defense of their country, tribe, or family, but that is actually a very limited part of the definition. A warrior adheres to a code of conduct, dedication to mission, and loyalty to their nation. But to create, one makes a single defining factor that only others shy away from. Warriors are created in any given society in order to kill. Killing is morally incorrect for the masses. Only the warrior class in any given society is tailored to shoulder the burden. A burden it surely is. To accept this burden, there is a contractual agreement. Joining the military just for college benefits is a terrible idea. We are a nation at war. The contract gives incentives in the form of benefits after service, but the upfront price is a person as a whole, meaning the government owns you, so to speak. It is easy to understand because a service member can be charged with punishment for getting a sunburn, making them unable to train. Where the civilian populace follows federal, state, and local laws, the military has their own set of laws to go along with them as the same for each branch. It's called the Uniform Code of Military Justice, often stated as UCMJ. The Military Code of Conduct perfectly illustrates the burden associated with enlistment with the first of 6 articles stating, I am an American, fighting in the forces which guard my country and our way of life. I am prepared to give my life in their defense. Not only must they be prepared to kill, they must be prepared to die. From the burden, there is a bargain. Service members are told they will be taken care of after serving for any medical condition created or made worse while serving. Medical issues are a key factor in unit readiness, so the Department of Defense holds a high standard across the board for each branch. Unfortunately, the many recent years of war have taken a toll. Though the amount of injuries are relatively tiny in comparison to previous wars, the injuries still exist. They are not a situation that can just be brushed aside or forgotten. There are many environmental, chemical, and industrial influences on health of service members that impact them for their entire lives. Sometimes the cause doesn't present itself, and the service member can be in good health for years, only to succumb to devastating changes that destroy their quality of life. This is the period where the Department of Veterans Affairs takes over and handles what service members suffer from. The VA's motto was part of Abraham Lincoln's second inaugural speech, to care for him who shall have borne the battle, and for his widow, and for his orphan. Per the VA's disclosure of history on their website, they established a very distinct origin and duty. The United States has the most comprehensive system of assistance veterans of any nation in the world, with roots that can be traced back to 1636. When the Pilgrims of Plymouth Colony were at war with the Pequot Indians, the Pilgrims passed a law that stated that disabled soldiers would be supported by the colony. Later, the Continental Congress of 1776 encouraged enlistment during the Revolutionary War, provided pensions to disabled soldiers. In the early days of the Republic, individual states and communities provided direct medical and hospital care to veterans. In 1811, the federal government authorized the first domiciliary and medical facility for veterans. Also in the 19th century, the nation's Veterans Assistance Program was expanded to include benefits and pensions not only for veterans, but for their widows and dependents. The framework has been evolving, but the reason has stayed the same. A nation must be prepared to take care of their veterans if war is their wish. Fast forward to present day, and we have possible alternating views on this subject. My research question: what is the current veteran or civilian opinion pertaining to medical treatment given at the facilities ran by the Department of Veterans Affairs? My research began by studying opinions of the VA through two separate surveys. They targeted veterans and civilians respectively. The question slightly differed, but the underlying objective was to compare their opinions. The study culminated with 236 participants, 141 veterans, and 95 civilians. To look at the veterans survey, it consisted of 12 questions pertaining mostly to demographics particular to the military. Age ranged from 18 to 75, having 38% between 25 to 34 years of age, and 24% from 35 to 44, so that makes up the bulk, being the two largest categories. The survey participants were 91% male. 40 states and other territories were represented. The largest branches identified with participants were 50% Army, 33% Marines. There were 13% Navy, 8% Air Force, and 1% Coast Guard. So there was representation for each, but some had a lot less. 93% were enlisted, with only 3% representing officers. But there was a 4% outlier of individuals that had served as both. The range ranged from POC all the way up to full-bird colonel and warrant officer. 85% had been deployed, with 67% having been in combat. There were participants from World War II, the Korean War, Vietnam, the Persian Gulf War, and OIF-OEF. Those 60% came from OIF alone. Past the general information, the question switched directly to the VA. 64% stated they utilized the VA for medical purposes. When asked if they feel the government had adequately addressed issues pertaining to medical treatment within the VA facilities, 89% said no. When asked if they feel betrayed by the American populace, 63% said yes. I will explain why this question is so important. Many of the veterans I've talked to are divided on this one topic, because over half feel the populace has the power to bring this issue to the government for change. The other half feels the government's fault and lays the blame solely on them. In comparison, the civilian survey consists of almost half male, half female, at 56 to 44%. The location of participants ranged from 26 locations, but the bulk came from Mississippi at 52%. There was a need to identify if these individuals utilized news sources in order to understand their connection with the media and if they had any knowledge of VA in general or the scandals in recent news. 93% followed the news, 100% knew what the VA is, and 97% were familiar with the media coverage of scandals. 96% felt the government had not addressed the medical issues with VA facilities. 90% stated they feel the American populace has betrayed its veterans. 98% felt that there should be more done for veterans. 100% felt that there should be a military. Yet, 8% stated they would not assist disabled veterans through volunteering if given a chance. Sadly, this is the state of events. It is paramount to notice the 90% civilian statement of betrayal. Comparing that to the veterans, who held high expectations of numbers, the civilians surprised me. I also did not expect to see such a high number of media connections in concerning the events pertaining to the medical treatment at VA facilities. Though the veterans survey met my expectations, the civilian survey brought more questions that needed further research. It is hard to understand that anyone can miss so many opportunities to see what the media has covered over the past few years on medical treatment at VA facilities, which tends to be the fallback as an answer to why things are and are the way they are. People just don't know. My research shows that this is not the case, that people do know. The gap between the warrior class and the civilians at large is widening drastically every day. Imagine a culture that is told to lose their identity and assimilate in a time where all other cultures are fully supported to be who they are and express themselves. Warriors are told they must accept society's demands with no questions. There is no such thing as a transition. I know it all too well, as I'm a former active duty Marine with 2 tours in Iraq, the invasion, and Fallujah. I served a total of 11 years, 7 of which were in the Army National Guard as an infantryman. I was diagnosed with a combat-related injury in the form of progressive lung disease just a few years ago, effectively ending my career. As an infantry sergeant, one that lived, one that has fought, one that has seen, I know all too well it's more than offensive to tell a warrior they must remove their hard-earned identity because it conflicts with societal norms. These are titles earned, not freely given. We don't believe in participation trophies. Shift to the darker side, suicide among veterans has been estimated at 22 a day by a study conducted in 2012 titled Suicide Data Report 2012 by Dr. Janet Kemp and Dr. Robert Ozark from the VA Mental Health Services Suicide Prevention Program. Though it is not a fully accurate number due to the event that half of the U.S. states participating in the study did not participate, only 22 out of the 50. If we use it, we find out that over 18% of all suicides would then come from the warrior class, which means 7% of the population harbors 18% of all suicides. Understanding what honor is helps you understand where these suicides come from. Today, the warriors come from all over, from an all-volunteer force, bonded together in struggle and pain. They share the world's harsh reality and shoulder the burden of chaos on a global scale. They are then abandoned by the same people that send them forth, the same machine that built them, and the same government that pleaded to them. The conclusion is the bargain is not upheld. Warriors hold up their end. When will this nation uphold its? How many must suffer, struggle, and die in the effort to shield the masses? Warriors are not numbers. They are not mass-produced. It's a change they accept and take pride in. Honor is the foundation of the warrior culture. To break a bargain is to be dishonored. Warriors are being dishonored, and there is no greater shame than to be dishonored. Any questions?